A heavy-duty trash bag washes ashore on a quiet Boston beach. Inside, the lifeless body of a toddler. No name, no missing persons report. No one is looking for her. For 85 days, she was known only as Baby Doe, the haunting face of a mystery that chilled the entire nation. But the truth behind her death? That was even darker than anyone imagined. Before we begin, if you believe in seeking justice for the forgotten, make sure to subscribe to Secrets in the Shadows, like this video, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single case. Now, let's begin. On June 25th, 2015, a woman was walking her dog on the shore of Deer Island, a quiet island in Boston Harbor. It was a normal day, but then she saw it. A heavy-duty trash bag sitting among the rocks by the water. We can only imagine what she was thinking, but something made her look inside. What she found would start a murder investigation. It would also shock the whole country and show how a chain of failures left a 2-year-old girl all alone in her final, scary moments. For 85 long days, no one knew her name. She was just called Baby Doe. An artist used a computer to make a picture of her sweet, round face. This picture, like a digital ghost, was shared millions of times, hoping someone, anyone, would know who she was. That picture became a symbol of a desperate search for answers. How can a child disappear without anyone reporting her missing? The search for her name would uncover a terrible secret. It was a story about a horrible crime and also about a system that should have kept her safe and a society that somehow looked away. This is the story of the girl they called Baby Doe and the many failures that led to the death of Bella Nevaeh Amoroso Bond. When police arrived on Deer Island, what they found was sad and confusing. Inside the trash bag was the body of a little girl, maybe 2 or 3 years old. She was wearing polka dot leggings and was wrapped in a zebra print blanket, but there was nothing to tell them who she was. The first, most important job in a death investigation is to find out who the person is. But here, they had no leads. Police checked her description in every missing children's database in the country. They found no matches. They checked local records and state records. Still nothing. It was like this little girl never existed. In those first few days, the silence was heavy and strange. No frantic parents were calling the police. No worried family members were raising an alarm. It's a scary thought. She was a total mystery. Desperate to show the public her face, they asked the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children for help. A forensic artist used great skill to make a digital picture of what the little girl might have looked like when she was alive. The final image looked sadly real. A beautiful child with deep brown eyes and a shy little smile. On July 2nd, 2015, that face was shown to the world, and Baby Doe was born. The response was immediate and huge. Her face was shared more than 50 million times on social media. Billboards all over Massachusetts showed her eyes. The mystery of Baby Doe became something the whole country cared about. Everyone worked together to try and give this forgotten child her name back. But even with all the news attention and many tips, nothing led to an answer. For almost 3 months, her face was everywhere, yet she was still unknown. Millions of people saw her face, but it felt like no one who could have saved her had really seen her. Everyone was asking the same question. Who was this little girl, and where was her family? Would Bella still be alive if someone, anyone, had just looked closer? While the public searched for a familiar face, a different kind of search was happening in science labs. There wasn't much to go on. The zebra print blanket and polka dot leggings were the kind you can buy anywhere, so they were almost impossible to trace. The best chance for answers came from the little girl's body itself, but the ocean had washed so much away. Still, science teams carefully looked at every tiny piece, hoping to find a small clue. And they found one. A big clue came from the study of pollen. Scientists looked at the pollen found in her hair, in her nose, and on her clothes. Think of it like a pollen fingerprint. Different plants have their own kind of pollen, which can show where someone has been. The results were a huge step forward. Most of the pollen came from the Boston area. It included pollen from city parks and trees. This strongly suggested she was from the local area, not far away. It was like nature itself was pointing to the city of Boston. At the same time, ocean scientists were using computers to figure out where the bag might have been dropped in the water to end up on Deer Island. The computer models suggested it might have been near South Boston. But even with all this science, the case was still missing the most important thing: a person. There was no DNA match and no fingerprints. Science had made the search smaller, but the answer was still hidden. They needed a witness. Someone had to know who this child was. And as the summer of 2015 ended, that person was about to speak up. The big break in the case didn't come from a lab or a computer. It came from a neighbor who felt he had to do the right thing. For months, a friend of Rochelle Bond's boyfriend, Michael McCarthy, had a growing bad feeling. He knew Rochelle had a young daughter named Bella, but he hadn't seen her in a long time. When he asked about her, Rochelle and Michael's stories kept changing. First, she was with family. Then, they said child services took her. The friend knew about Rochelle's troubled past and her drug problems. He also knew Michael McCarthy acted strangely and was obsessed with demons. None of it felt right. He kept seeing the baby doe posters around the city, and the bad feeling in his stomach got worse. Finally, he asked Rochelle directly. The truth that came out was worse than he could have imagined. Rochelle Bond allegedly told him that Michael McCarthy had killed Bella. With this terrible information, the friend made the phone call that broke the case open. On September 18th, 2015, 85 days after her body was found, police searched Rochelle Bond's apartment. They arrested both her and her boyfriend, Michael McCarthy. Suddenly, the mystery the whole country was watching had a name. Baby Doe was Bella Nevaeh Amoroso Bond. She was almost 3 years old. The district attorney, Daniel Conley, announced the news at a press conference. His words were full of sadness. This child, whose very name means beauty, was murdered. The nameless child finally had her name back. It was a moment where people felt relieved, but also very sad. But the end of one mystery was just the start of an even darker one. The question was no longer, who is she? It was, what happened to her? The answer they would find was hidden in that apartment. The apartment on Maxwell Street was a scene of chaos and neglect. Police said it was dirty and messy. It was clear that the heroin addiction of Rochelle Bond and Michael McCarthy had taken over the place. What's so scary is that there was almost no sign that a child had ever lived there. Bella's toys and her clothes were gone. It was like she was never there. In this sad place, Rochelle Bond started to tell her story. Her story would become the most important part of the case against McCarthy. She said that one night, Bella was having trouble sleeping, like any toddler. But McCarthy, who Rochelle claimed was obsessed with the idea that Bella was a demon, became very angry. According to her testimony, she walked into the bedroom and saw McCarthy punching her 2-year-old daughter in the stomach, hitting her so hard the little girl's body bounced on the bed. Rochelle said she tried to stop him, but he threatened to kill her if she told anyone. The horror didn't stop there. Rochelle testified that McCarthy then gave her heroin, and for several days they kept Bella's body in a refrigerator in the apartment. Eventually, she said, McCarthy put Bella's body into a duffel bag with weights, drove to South Boston, and threw her into the harbor. This was the story the lawyers for the state used. A mother who was too scared to act, controlled by a violent man. But there was another version of the story. Michael McCarthy's lawyers told a very different story. They called Rochelle Bond a monster and a liar who made up a story to blame McCarthy and save herself. They talked about her past, her drug use, and how her story kept changing. The lawyers argued that Rochelle was the one who killed her daughter and made up the story about McCarthy to hide what she did. So, who do you believe? Only 2 people knew the truth of what happened in that apartment, and both were heroin users whose words were questioned in court. The jury had a very hard job. They had to listen to the lies and sad stories to decide who was telling the truth and who was the real monster. The trial of Michael McCarthy was upsetting. The case was built almost completely on what one person said, Rochelle Bond. This part of the story is very hard to accept. To get her to speak against McCarthy, the state lawyers offered her a deal. She would plead guilty to helping after the crime and to stealing for taking welfare money for Bella after she was dead. In return, she would be released for time served and be put on probation. The defense, of course, argued this was a deal with the devil that gave her every reason to lie. They questioned her intensely in court, pointing out every time her story changed. So, was she a scared victim, or was she a clever liar who did a terrible thing and was now blaming her boyfriend? The state lawyers had almost no science-based proof that connected McCarthy to the murder. The entire case rested on whether or not the jury believed Rochelle Bond, but the failure here was bigger than just what happened in court. Another bigger failure of the system became clear. The Massachusetts Department of Children and Families, the agency meant to protect kids like Bella, had been involved with her family before. In 2012 and 2013, DCF got reports that Bella was not being cared for properly. A review later found that the agency knew Rochelle Bond had already lost her rights as a parent to 2 older children. That is a huge warning sign. How many red flags were missed before it was too late? And yet, both cases were closed. A report that came out after Bella's death was very critical. It said DCF missed opportunities and trusted Rochelle's statements too much instead of checking if they were true. For 20 months after DCF walked away, no one was officially watching out for Bella Bond. She disappeared into her mother's messy life, and no one with the power to help came looking for her. The safety net we believe is there for children had holes so big that a 2-year-old girl fell right through them. In June 2017, the jury made its decision. They found Michael McCarthy guilty of second-degree murder. This means they believed he wanted to harm Bella, but didn't plan the murder ahead of time. He was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of being released after 20 years. And Rochelle Bond? Because of her deal, she was sentenced to the time she had already been in jail and 2 years of probation. She was let out of jail and sent right to a center to get help for her drug problem. The woman who admitted she helped get rid of her daughter's body, who did nothing while it was kept in a refrigerator, and who lied for months about where she was, walked free. The result of the trial left many people feeling that real justice had not been served. The state lawyers defended the deal. They said that without Rochelle's story, they had no case against McCarthy at all. But to other people, it felt like Bella had been betrayed all over again. Perhaps the saddest voice in all of this was Bella's birth father, Joe Amoroso. He had his own problems with addiction and had never met his daughter. He came from Florida for the trial, like a ghost, there for a child he never knew. The statement he wrote for the court was full of pure sadness. Outside the court, he cried and told reporters he felt very guilty. He said he believed if he had fixed his own life sooner, his daughter might still be alive. Years later, the case of Bella Bond still doesn't offer any easy answers. The real truth of what happened the night she died is probably lost forever, hidden under lies, drug use, and sad events. From prison, Michael McCarthy continues to say he's innocent. What remains is the legacy of Baby Doe. Her computer-generated face became a powerful symbol for all forgotten victims, a haunting reminder of the system's catastrophic failures. But Bella's story is more than a lesson in policy. It's a painful look at what happens when a society looks away. She was failed by the adults she depended on and by the very people meant to be her last line of defense. She wasn't a mystery. She was a child, and she deserved so much more. Thank you for joining me here on Secrets in the Shadows. Please don't forget to subscribe as we continue to seek the truth for those who no longer have a voice. Rest in peace, baby Bella.